Okay.
I want to pull 11-7 for conversation.
11-7. And 11-7 for you. Show those pulled. Okay. And is that?
And also, Mayor, I know that it's scheduled for a public hearing, but I would like to defer the ordinance regarding Centerport to the March meeting, March 11th meeting as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
He wants to
What was
defer
that?
the Centerport item to the March 11th meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, I'll have to open up public.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it? All right. You got those, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. I need a motion on the agenda as amended.
Motion.
Second it.
It's been moved and amended. Seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. We're now, let's go straight to, let's open up the land use item now so that we can do that now.
The 8.1 item or the quasi judicial?
Quasi judicial.
I'll read the ordinance, but you need to open up the hearings.
We're now moving to the quasi judicial portion of the meeting.
Nikisha?
Nikisha, we're going to open up quasi judicial so we can go ahead and defer the Centerport item now. Come on up. I know this is all complicated. This is our deputy clerk. She doesn't normally sit up here, so we're going to walk her through this today just fine. Please turn off your phones. I definitely don't want to hear the whole song.
Good evening and welcome to the quasi-judicial portion of the February 12, 2020 City Council meeting. For those persons that will or may be speaking on an item on the agenda or commenting on any item, please stand up and be sworn in by the city clerk. For the applicants, your item will be called to order by agenda number and by the title of your request. When your item is called, please approach the microphone and when addressed, speak directly and clearly stating your name and address for the record, and explain the reason for your request. Please note that all exhibits presented to the mayor and the council will become part of the public record.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is truthful to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Announce the item.
Okay, what item was that now?
Item number 13.1.1.
I'll read it. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, approving the application submitted by CenterPoint Owner LLC for the rezoning of property located at 20775 Northwest 17th Avenue, Miami Gardens, Florida, more particularly described on Exhibit A attached here to from R25 multiple family dwelling residential to PD planned development, providing for adoption representations, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing an effective date. Sponsored by the city manager.
All right, Mr. Manager, you want to defer this item?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. I need a motion to defer.
Motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We defer this item until the March
March 11th.
11th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Sure deferred. All right. Quasi judicial is open, but we're going to do the rest of the agenda now, right? We're going to back up. So let's go ahead and go to public comments. Xavier Ingram, as you all approach, you have 2 minutes. State your name and your address. You have 2 minutes.
All right, hello, Xavier Ingram, 20641 Northwest 17th Avenue.
Mr. Ingram, you're a little tall. That's a little short.
Okay, I'm sorry, Xavier Ingram.
Thank you.
20641 Northwest 17th Avenue. I'm a long-term resident, been here since before Joe Robbie Stadium, before the inception of Miami Gardens. My issue is a lack of vision with our council. With the Super Bowl, we've had Super Bowls here 2 years in a row. this is something that we should have been ahead of, implemented something so it can increase residents as far as income to the residents. That whole thing could have been done by residents as far as black-owned businesses, also with the Formula One. I wish I would have seen some of you out there with us protesting against this agenda. And my biggest thing is, like I said, I just hope that in the future that we look ahead and we look at things and solutions that can enhance our residents, not something that will deter or take away from them or have something here that doesn't benefit us as a whole. All right, and that's my biggest thing. Just I would just like to see vision. I would just like to see y'all on the front lines with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Please make sure you stay for the whole meeting. I'd love to address some of that in my report. Love to. Mary Reeves.
Good evening. My name is Mary Reeves, community advocate / activist. I reside at 1521 Northwest 168 Terrace. I come before you today to commend one of your employees, Nakisha Smith. I called her concerning a zoning issue, and she resolved it very timely and in a heartfelt manner. And secondly, I'm in favor of agenda item 11.7, and I thank Dr. I for having the courage to bring that before the commission, the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Francis Ragu. Francis Ragu.
Good evening, Francis Ragu, 889 Northwest 214th Street, Miami Gardens, Florida, 33169. I'm here in support of the agenda item 8.1.
Thank you. That's what he said. Basil Cole.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Attorney, and Manager, residents. I am here this evening here. My name is Basil Cole, and my address is 2350 Northwest 187th Street, Miami Gardens, zip code 33056. On Sunday 26, my wife and I had the pleasure of attending a National Black Law Enforcement Executive Noble South Florida Chapter Law Enforcement Appreciation Service at the Shore Life Foundation Ministry. And we were invited by Ms. Laverne Deer. I witnessed our very own police chief, Delma Pratt, Officer Fraser, and Officer Nellie Joseph, and other Broward and Dade County officers recognized for their outstanding service and commitment to our communities. I would also like to congratulate our police department on a job well done during the recent Super Bowl event within our beautiful city of Miami Gardens. Oftentimes we don't give our own the recognition they deserve, so I'm here tonight on behalf of myself and the residents to give them thanks for the well done job that they have done, and we do appreciate their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Betty T. Ferguson.
Good evening, all. I am here, Betty T. Ferguson, 1625 Northwest 188th Terrace, Miami Gardens. I'm here to support Ordinance 8.1 and Resolution 11.7, which, if passed, I believe, directs the city manager to withhold support from the Dolphins and any event connected to the stadium until the question of whether or not Formula One racing will be allowed at Hard Rock Stadium. I hope this resolution will also prevent our mayor from spending 1 cent of my tax dollars to hire any firm to render a third opinion on the devastating noise and air pollution. RCL homeowners paid good money to hire an expert in order to get a professional opinion about the devastating effects of the noise and air pollution associated with Formula One racing. The Dolphins did exactly as we expected them to do. They paid a firm to downplay our expert's report and the report of the county's auditor. They know better than most how to buy opinions to protect the millions of dollars they put in their pockets. So why in the world would Miami Gardens pay for another opinion unless they are intentionally or unintentionally trying to give cover to the Dolphins, to justify creating another Flint, Michigan type of situation? The City of Miami Gardens administrators, elected officials, and elected official wannabes ought to be screaming to the top of their lungs to stop Formula One racing from destroying the quality of life in Miami Gardens. It's called environmental racism.
Thank you. Brenda Harper.
Good evening, everyone. I am Brenda Harper, 3266 Northwest 203 Street, Miami Gardens, Florida. Two things I wanted to bring to the attention of the council and to the city manager. In reference to our youth, I know there are activities that happens in the city for the youth. However, those activities, they're being limited, or it's being limited with the age, and or the time for those activities. Whenever I signed my son up, who's now 15, for soccer, he did attend the soccer, which was one of the events that he was able to because of the times, but because of the age group that was there, he didn't really want to be there because he was one of the older children, and by him being pretty tall, most of the children seemed like elementary age students. There is, I think, snorkeling or scuba diving that's available now for people to sign their youth up for. And with that, the age group is below 15. If it's for the youth, I'm concerned or questioning why is it not for all of the youth. And I understand with grants and different things of such that certain things, it's age specific, but we need to look for additional grants or funding or something, or even having the parents to pay for these different events. Also, in reference to the Super Bowl, we did a lot of beautification to our city with painting walls, just planting trees and various other things. However, so many events were removed from the city. For the Super Bowl, things were held down on South Beach and other places. The Super Bowl was held right here, but all of the dollars went to other cities. We spent a lot of money, and I don't believe that the businesses, they profited at all. From my understanding, Walmart stated that they would have done better by closing on that day because of how little business that they received on that day.
Ms.
But
Harper,
yet,
you're 2 minutes into the
Okay.
couple of seconds ago. But
well, thank
again,
you.
Thank you. Sidney Bryan.
All right, Sidney Bryan, 20400 Northwest 25th Court. My thing is the red light camera. When are we going to get rid of the red light cameras in Miami Gardens? It's squeezing the residents. It's a way to make money for the city or when the mailing come to you, it's an out-of-town, out-of-state address with Miami Gardens. Who is getting money from Miami Gardens? That's not right. Just look at this matter, because when most of these elected officials were running, they weren't supporting the red light cameras, and all of a sudden, squeezed in the residents of the city. That's not nice. That's not good. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Dupree.
Good evening. Howard Dupree, 1734 Northwest 192nd Street. I wish to speak to agenda items 8.1 and 11.7. About 8.1, just like you recently reviewed a lot of the city ordinances, you clarified them. You defined them better. You set parameters on a lot of them. Well, this ordinance 8.1 does the same thing. To me, it better defines it, clarifies it, and put parameters. It gives it, numerical value of what noise is. Plus, it aligns it with the National Health Organization. So I'm in favor of you passing that tonight. It also aligns it with the CDC on their suggestions what noise levels should or shouldn't be. In reference to 11.7, I think it's about time you took a good review of our relationship with Hard Rock Stadium. As somebody just previously said, the city, well, it appears the city did not benefit from any of the Super Bowl activities. And it appears that we spend a lot of money and didn't, gain anything for those activities. I think we opened our arms for the Super Bowl, for Hard Rock Stadium, NFL, and what did we get? The middle finger. So I encourage you to pass those two ordinances.
Thank you. Amy Coleman. We got it. Thank you, Ms. Cole. Ms. Dupree. Amy Coleman.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Amy Coleman. My resident is 2841 Northwest 212 Street, Miami Gardens. But you heard me, though.
The record didn't hear you.
But anyway, it's pertaining to the Formula One car racing. I have a question. It's like, are you aware Hard Rock Stadium is on Miami-Dade County property? If so, how can you override this situation? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Bernita. You can talk to her in the back about that, Bernita. Thank you. Marlene Arribas.
Good evening. My name is Marlene Arribas. I live at 20630 North Miami Avenue. I'm here to support 8.1, the noise ordinance, and 11.7. And I have a question for the attorney. Does this ordinance apply to the stadium district or just Miami Gardens?
We don't actually do question and answer in public, but I'm sure that'll come up in our discussion. I'm sure it will.
Thank you.
Marcus Bach-Armas.
Good evening. I was not going to speak, but I heard some commentary about the Super Bowl, and I want to take
Your
a
name
moment.
and your address, please.
My name is Marcus Bach-Armas. Address is 347 Don Shula Drive, Miami Gardens, Florida 33056. And I heard some comments about the Super Bowl, and I think there's something of a misunderstanding. But first of all, I want to thank the city of Miami Gardens and all the residents for hosting what was a spectacular Super Bowl. And I want to point out that this is only the third Super Bowl that we've hosted since the city of Miami Gardens was incorporated. And Super Bowls are a work in progress. And if you go back and look a few games ago, you'll see it was live from Miami, Florida. And I don't think residents understand the effort that this council has put into making sure the Miami Gardens got the recognition that it deserves. And if you go back into the broadcast, Joe Buck mentioned Miami Gardens repeatedly. The geotags now say Miami Gardens, Florida. Can we get better? Yes. Should we get better? Absolutely. We all work together to get better. The Business Connect program has been built. You have to be 51% minority owned or to participate in the Business Connect program. And for those that question the relationship that Hard Rock Stadium and the Miami Dolphins have with the city, I would just like to remind you that we contribute 32 million community service hours, $8.7 million distributed by our foundation, 126,000 meals distributed, 31,000 community service hours through special teams, 3,500 youth engaged through the Junior Dolphins program, and hundreds of thousands of dollars committed to the 5,000 role models, along with $1 million to create a city year program at Norland and Carroll City High. If that's what you want to walk away from, if that's what we want to terminate with these sorts of resolutions, that's okay. I just want to be clear that we are committed to being good community partners. We have been good community partners, and we will continue to be good community partners. So thank you for a wonderful Super Bowl, and let's make the next one even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Holland.
Robert Holland, 3250 Northeast 1st Avenue, Miami, Florida. I'm here for the most part to say, as leaders, we all have to try to come together to find solutions to issues. And you have the pros and the cons on all of these things. And while I know there's some concern about Formula One and the noise, I've always said all along, you need to sit down at the table and see how you address the boogeyman in the room and find out if facts are truly facts, if data is truly data, and sometimes you have to have some sort of analysis on that. As an African American, I know how easy it is to get a scar that somebody throws out there on you, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to defend it. Let's deal with the facts as they are. My concern about the sound ordinance is the unintended consequences it may have on folk within your city. So you may want to take a much more deliberate look at how you deal with this here, because it won't just be aimed at the stadium. It becomes a draw card for people who are dealing with noise, period, whether it's house parties, any number of things where you're having people arrested. So you may want to take a look at the unintended consequences with that. Secondly, as it relates to the relationship with the Dolphins, you guys have to figure that out. Do I think that relationship should be better? I think everybody in your community thinks it should be better. And I think the Dolphins understand it should be a better relationship. But somehow or another, people have to get to the table and try to find out what that relationship is going to be to move the agenda of Miami Gardens residents. But if you start saying you're not doing anything with them, some of your crown jewels, what happens to Jazz in the Garden from a noise standpoint as well as from a relationship standpoint? What about the Orange Bowl Classic? What about a number of other things that you're starting to see happen on this site? This is your downtown corridor. You need to make sure it's obviously developed with some respect, but you need to make sure all of your businesses are connecting and doing something in the city for the residents, and not just one, but the one who's the biggest one. You ought to put some pressure on them to do some things, but you need to be at the table versus just saying no, no, no to everything. How do we get to the table and see if there's some solutions that we can work through? And if not, then no. But go to the table first and figure that out if you can get to that point. And to me, that becomes important for a city.
Thank you. Public comment is now closed.
Ordinance is on for first reading.
Gonna read 8-1, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, amending Chapter 16, Article 2, Section 16-25, noise of the Code of Ordinances, providing for adoption representations, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing an effective date, sponsored by Councilman IGHODARO.
Is this public hearing?
Yes. No, it's on first reading.
First reading.
I'm sorry, Mayor, no, it's not.
All right, Ms. Iguodaro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item calls for us to amend our current noise ordinance from the current reasonable person standard, which I consider to be subjective, and most of you would agree, to a decibel reading and more objective standard. I have had many opportunities to discuss this issue with our attorney. And while I agree that the current standard under normal circumstance would give our code enforcement officers or any designated officer more discretionary authority. But under the current circumstance, with a potential violator with deep pockets and good lawyers can effectively challenge the reasonable person standard. What does the science tell us? We know from the federal government, the Environmental Protection Agency, that the recommended noise level is 75 decibel. And every major article I've read on this issue, I've always cited decibel readings as a standard, not reasonableness. I support our community. I support this council. We voted unanimously to the item that Lily, Councilwoman Odom, brought forth. I support Commissioner Barbara Jordan, Commissioner Betty Ferguson, the entire Miami Gardens community, those that have been protesting. But I have to do what I'm elected to do. By law, we can make laws and amend laws. The ordinance is already in the books. Why not make it more effective in terms of our approach to enforcing what this community said they want? We don't want Formula One. And this is not about, this item is not about Formula One. It's about what is already in the books. You know, we got to fix what we have. If somebody is coming to break my house, break into my house, I have the right to go put bars and burglar bars in my house. So this is about protecting our house. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the item.
Okay. It died for...
Is it open for discussion?
No one seconded it yet. So second. Okay. It's open for discussion now.
Yeah. I guess my question would be to our attorney. With the noise ordinance, are we targeting automobile racing or automobiles in our community, or will this be for whatever events that take place in the community that the noise levels have reached a certain decimal, decibel?
Do you, ma'am? This amendment to the ordinance specifically relates to motor vehicles, and it sets a decibel for motor vehicles only, not every other noise in the city. So it sets a decibel limit of 75 for automobiles in the city. The amendment does.
How will we measure that?
The way you measure decibels is through a decibel machine. That's how you would do it. As far as I know, we do not have decibel machines, but that's how you measure decibels.
And will there, if we don't have a decibel machine to measure the decibels, because we have auto cars that run through our community all the time making noise, and that need to be stopped. But how would we go about doing that? How would code enforcement, since you mentioned code enforcement, how would they go about implementing that? When we don't.
That's not for me. I don't do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager. Mr. Manager.
Okay. Vice Mayor, currently our code enforcement officers do not have those machines to measure any noise in any community, any issue, any event that's going on in the city. Secondly, even if we got the machines, I would recommend as your manager that our staff not be involved in the measurement of decibels regarding noise activities in the city. I would consider someone outside that we could hire to help. But through our code enforcement, there's too much going on, and I'm certainly not going to put that burden on our police department. So with that, if we were to look at anything, it would not be something that I would recommend bringing to you as a staff activity regarding their day-to-day activities that they're doing right now.
Mr. Mayor. Me and him. Just like a police officer not just going to say, yeah, I suspect you're speeding. There has to be some measurable standard. You know, in court, they have to show radar or show some measurement that, I mean, they can say that you're speeding, but again, it's subjective. That's my point. Again, this is not about encumbering our code enforcement officers. I believe that if this council is serious about trying to send a message that this is not wanted in our community, we will put the resources to get. I don't think decibel reading machines are a diamond that you cannot afford. And I think because of the necessary threat that our community faces, this potentially could pay for itself, even if it means somebody just talking about red light cameras that I've opposed red light cameras. But we find a way to get a third-party contractor to run red light cameras in our community. You would do it if you want to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Leon.
I think as a council, we all agreed that we were against Formula One. And we want to make sure that we bring a good item, something that's sufficient, that can stand in regards to this issue. But I don't see us being able to, unless you have a better way of policing this issue, that we can enforce this. And this is not saying that we're against, and we support Formula One. By no means, we've never said that we support Formula One. But we want to make sure that we have something that's valid, that we can stand and won't put us in a position where we can be sued by Formula One.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
You know, is this on?
Yeah.
When I took a look at this, I saw no fiscal impact. So the question I'm asking is, what is the impact on our budget, on our day-to-day operations? Now, we are talking specifically in this, amending this to include automobiles, but we also have fireworks. So now, how are we to assume that from the noise of the fireworks there is no damage to the ear, and from the cars that there is? And I'm only saying that again, I voted like everybody else did about Formula One, but I don't want to be selective necessarily in our code enforcement, because this is the next thing. If you go out and you're going to enforce this code, who enforces it? The police or code enforcement? And if code enforcement goes, what do? They give them a citation? And if they give them a citation, what comes with the citation? In other words, you are given 30 days not to race no more? And then they race again, and then you give it another 30 days and a $500 fine? I mean, when we take a look at that question, especially since Formula One can take place on the grounds of the stadium with or without our consent, then that means that the mitigating noise would have to be measured, would have to really be determined to have an effect, and we would, as a council, have to accept responsibility for the burden of being able to prove that in what I am sure will be a legal battle. And I'm not against the legal battle, but I'm saying if we know that that is where it's going to lead us, then we've got to really have some strong conversations about that. Now, here's what my problem is, and I voiced this before. I don't know who's been at the table, but I haven't. I haven't sat at a table where anybody has said anything to me about Formula One. I haven't sat at a table where we have had any mediation from this council's position about what is going on with Formula One and whether, in fact, there is something that we could come to an agreement on. And so more or less what we hear about in the newspaper. No, I'm just telling you about Katrina. I'm not arguing with anybody else. I'm talking about from a council person's perspective. And so when we have to sit here and we have to vote, I need to vote from an educated perspective, from not only the side of where the stadium sits, the side of where our Metro-Dade County sits, and the side from where independently as a city, that we have really done some kind of analysis of what this impact is on us as a city, and that we can sit as a council and really digest that information and be able to make a strong decision that is in the best interest of this city. Now, we can talk about severing the relationship with the Dolphins. We can do that. But let's talk about also the taxation in terms of what's going to happen to our city. And if we are really ready to assume the burden and the responsibility of that impact, and if we agree that that's what we are going to do, then that's what we do. But I am not comfortable making a decision without something in front of me that we have had, that we have hashed out that allows us as a city council to look at it and digest it and discuss it and put it forth and make recommendations based on what is in the best interest of the entire city of Miami Gardens. And so I can appreciate the noise level. I can appreciate the code thing, but does that really answer the question in terms of what the residents are saying is not good for them? And to me, that's a tremendous concern to me. I don't know if it fully addresses it. I don't know if 11.7 or 1 addresses it either. You know, like severing the relationship, where does that put us? It's no fiscal impact looked at.
Okay. Hold
Mr.
on, I'm
Mayor.
going down the line. I got you.
Okay.
Councilwoman Ona. You,
You-
Councilwoman
Oh,
Ona.
okay. I'd like to bring our focus back to this ordinance.
That is the focus.
And well, one item in the ordinance is what I'm saying, the one that has been highlighted as it relates to the noise. We already have, let it be known that we already have a noise ordinance. And this is just one line that has been added, two lines that has been added to the already existing ordinance. And maybe my concern and my question is to the attorney, because what we're looking at for tonight, and Madam Attorney, if you would correct me, is that we're looking at adding the motor vehicle noise. It actually says the motor vehicle noise that exceeds the 75 decibels, and that is to be prohibited. Is that what we're adding to our already existing noise ordinance for tonight? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
I really hate operating in the dark, we're not having all the information and data. Is there any way, well, there is a way. I think we need to look at, as a council, having a meeting, a workshop on this whole ordeal with Formula One and really get involved in it and not just get pieces of it from this person and that person, and come up with a solution that makes this a great city. I voted against Formula One, and I would vote against it again. But I really want to make a great decision based on facts and data. And I don't have all those facts and data.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just speak broadly to a couple of points. and then specifically this. I actually drafted the noise ordinance that you're trying to amend. And the reason why we drafted it the way it was is because it actually gave us the discretion to cite and shut down things that might not have been loud to you, but it was loud to that person. Like if someone worked during the night and they slept at day and during the day and their neighbor was playing music, it might have been prohibitively loud to that person, but it was loud to the person who needed to sleep. So the reason why we added the reasonable man standard, which is the standard that most cities have gravitated towards, it's not something that's an anomaly in Miami Gardens. It's because it gave our police officers and code enforcement officers the ability to look at a situation, especially if it was reoccurring, and say, you know what, this is unreasonable under the circumstances, and so we're going to cite this to stop it. Our noise ordinance, as written, gives us the ability to cite unreasonable noise. If we deem F1 cars are unreasonable noise, we can cite them under our noise ordinance as written. Period. Nothing has to change with that. So what I've seen evolving is we're going to have a whole bunch of ideas, and we're going to attack this from a whole bunch of different ways. This council has voted not to support Formula One. That is the stance of this city. We are unmoved. That doesn't mean we have to support every idea that comes up, especially if it's bad policy. So this in front of us right now, my concern is that we are gravitating towards uniquely bad policy. This is bad policy. Because if you have a young boy driving down a street and his car, he's playing his music and it's more than 75 decibels, does he get pulled over? Of course he gets pulled. Do you really want our officers pulling your sons, brothers, and husbands over because their music is loud? I don't. I just don't. Even more to the point, I'm not sure we can regulate specific, if you're going to say that noise and anything over 75 decibels damages your health, it's not anything over 75 decibels that are associated with vehicles. It's anything over 75 decibels. We can't regulate the type of noise in that way. We can just regulate noise. So there are ways for us to work against Formula One. We're doing that. This isn't changing our perfectly good noise ordinance. It's not one of those ways. And so we had this conversation before, and we talked about this before. And we decided that we would support Commissioner Jordan and what she was doing down there, and we would do everything on our end we could. And we have some arrows in our quiver. There are things that we can do. But this does not, first of all, it doesn't do anything, because what I suspect would happen is if you change this, what I suspect would happen is they would run the race and pay the fine. Because you can't preemptively cite a code enforcement violation, which is another reason why this makes very little sense. You can't preemptively cite someone. So they just pay the fine. And it would probably be a very cheap way out, because even if we hit them with the treble damages and it was now $1,500 instead of $500, this is not well thought out. Look, we can fight something and it can be smart. It has to be smart, because while everyone, and I appreciate that everyone believes that they speak for the residents, we actually speak for the residents. And that's not just the residents that show up in the room, that's the residents, all 113,000 of them. And we also, when we speak, we also incur liability. So what happens is when we speak as a dais and we say something that's unfounded, the city gets sued. And we have an obligation to the city as an entity also. This ordinance does nothing. That's why I'm not supporting it. The next item actually hurts the city. And so if you're going to find ways to fight Formula One, the ways ought to be effective. They ought to be targeted at Formula One, and specific to Formula One, and they ought not hurt the city, and they ought not make bad policy. And I don't see that in front of me right now. What I see in front of me is an emotional reaction to something that's very important. But when you're elected to lead, you can't just always be emotional. You got to be thoughtful. You got to sit down and figure this out. This is not figuring it out. I can't support this item.
I'm going to proffer a motion that we have a workshop around Formula One and come up with some real concrete data and a game plan. I have no clue what the game plan is at this point.
Okay.
I second.
It's been seconded and third. Okay. I think that is a good idea. Let me just tell you what the attorney is going to tell you. We're going to have this workshop. But because we anticipate ending up in litigation, she's probably not going to tell you what her strategy is for the litigation in an open workshop that everyone will attend. That's what she's going to tell you. But we can have we can hear from both sides. We can bring everybody in. We can hear from noise. We can do that if you want. But what we won't do is talk about what the city's position will be when we end up getting sued. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that in the open room. So, and we don't have the ability to call a shade session yet because there's nothing filed. So we've actually talked about those possibilities so that we could talk about it, and there's just no mechanism to allow us to talk about it. Okay? All right. Workshop, definitely.
Is that a vote?
Yeah. Call it. Yeah.
Would you pull your item after the workshop?
I'm going to support the idea of a workshop, and let me make this clear. You know, I don't want nobody disparaging every attempt that I make to try to make the voices of this community heard as being insignificant or not being well thought out. That should not be coming from somebody that did not attend a council meeting when we're voting on the most important issue in this community, facing our community. I get people calling me 11 o'clock at night, stressed out about Formula One coming to our community. I'm a strategist. I believe that there are multiple ways to skin a cat. You know, it doesn't mean my idea is going to be the only idea. You can have the strategy of the community is one strategy, activism. There's a political strategy, there's economic strategy, right? The idea of trying to let Formula One know with every opportunity that we have that they are not welcome here is not going to be lost on me or this community. We don't want them here. And if this item is just to let them know that this is another way for us to let you know, if you come here, you're potentially going to be, at least, it may be minimal cost to you, but you're going to be paying. And if there's good business entity and community conscious entity that it should be, you should not be forcing yourself on a community that don't want you. You should not come here if the community said they don't want you here. So it's a preventative strategy. It is a strategy of trying to contain them from coming here. I don't mind. I think this is, my idea is one way, I thought, of bringing this to a conversation point. I can call any one of you individually for us to have a discussion on it. You may have a great idea. I don't know what idea you have. I've not seen it. So what ideas do you have to fight this? I don't know. This is the opportunity we have.
Well,
hold on, time out. Wait, hold on. Okay. Hold on, wait. Wait, let me address something. First, let me just say that, Mr. Godaro, I wasn't actually here for the meeting because I was off in D.C. handling the business of the city. But every time I've had the opportunity to say that this city stands against Formula One, we have. So our position is clear in front of the county commission, in front of the stadium. They know what our position is. That doesn't change because I don't bring ordinances like this. So let's be clear about that. And I don't begrudge any person or any member of this council the ability to use the tools of this city to show people how they feel. But it never should cross the line into bad policy and probably illegal ordinances. There is a thing called content-based restrictions. You can't just talk about the type of noise specifically. This noise is bad. No, if it's 75 decibels, it's 75 decibels across the board. This is, and I can appreciate that you want to show the public where you stand on this. But ordinances are our versions of laws. They have standards, and that's why when we talked about this before, we said, hey, the city attorney and I, the manager, we come up with a plan we think works for the city. We looked at the different ordinances to see where we talked about that. And I don't mind actually talking about that publicly, but you should be aware. When we talk about it publicly, then everyone knows. Not just you, but everyone who's going to have to defeat the strategy knows also. So that's why we don't just openly talk about it. And so, but my unwillingness to talk about it, I'm indifferent to whether we talk about it. My position is clear. This council's position is clear. So we can workshop it. I don't know that our position will change. But when we get these ordinances in front of us, listen, passing bad ordinances as a city council has consequences. This is not just someone saying, I don't like Formula One. This isn't a resolution. This is a law. It has to be based on stuff. And we get sued. I can't say, well, you know what? We just wanted to show them they weren't wanted. I can't say that as a defense. I have to actually articulate a legal defense, which speaks to why we actually had to give a peer review. Because in the initial resolution that this council adopted when I wasn't here, you cited sound information, and the city didn't have any sound information. So perhaps if I were here and not in D.C. doing the people's business, I would have said you don't have to give a reason why you don't want something. You could just not want it. You don't have to be specific. But it was the specificity that this day is spoke with that's dictated how we moved. And so that's why we have to get a peer review of sound now. Because we have to try to back up what this day has said. We're not somewhere hiding trying to get Formula One in. That's not where we are with this.
Really?
Really. Really. Because Mr. Godaro, believe it or not, if I wanted Formula One, I'd just say it. I've been disagreed with by 2/3 of this room most of the time. If I think something is right, it's right. I'm willing to hang my hat on that. And so we're not trying to get Formula One in, Mr. Godaro. But this won't stop Formula One, and it's bad policy, and it puts the city in a bad position. What we can't do is put the city in a bad position.
Mr. Mayor, that's your
Hold
opinion.
on.
Yes. Who's next?
Because I'm still not just the mayor, but the chair.
Well,
Go ahead.
were you pointing at David or me?
Yeah.
I almost forgot what I was going to say. It's been so long. Well, he was talking, when you were talking about the ordinance, and I know what you were saying. You were talking about the fact that we don't have another venue where we can talk to each other. And what I wanted to make is that's the reasoning for having the workshop when we're able to have the workshop. And then my next thing was to ask you, are you going to pull your items until we have a workshop or we're able to have one?
Yes, I pulled the item. I pulled
You're going to
it.
pull the
Yes.
items? Both of them?
I think there's a conversation point, and there's some questions I need answered on the other item.
Well, we'll get to
talk
that.
about
Yeah, right.
I need a motion
Yeah,
to
well,
Okay,
pull the item, and we'll talk about the other one when we get to the other item.
yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about what, other one? The
His second
workshop?
item, yeah, no, the
Second
workshop.
item.
The second item.
So what about the
11-7.
workshop, though?
They can set the workshop.
Yeah.
So,
We don't need a motion to set the workshop. The workshop, just set the workshop.
So we'll have the workshop set within a reasonable amount of time?
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Well, we
Yes.
can.
No, 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 the reason why I'm saying this is because this is the essence of time. And so if we're gonna have a workshop, we need to have it in a reasonable enough time so that if this item comes back at the next board meeting, a council meeting, we will have heard from both sides. We will have something intangible that we can actually, as a council, begin to discuss. Now, if we're not gonna do it by the next, we need to put some time parameters on this.
As soon as practically possible, Mr. Manager. Thank you. All right. Wait, so what do I need on this item? You're asking you, I need, he's gonna pull, he withdrew the item. Okay,
That's 8-1,
that's
right?
8-1.
Okay.
So now I am on to
Item 8.2, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, amending Section 34-447 Tree Preservation and Protection Permit and Section 34-451 Maintenance Requirement of Chapter 34 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Miami Gardens to be consistent with Florida Statute Section 163.045, providing for adoption representations, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing an effective date, sponsored by the city attorney. Mayor and council, this ordinance was drafted as a result of new provisions in the Florida statutes, which basically say, in the event you decide that you need to prune or cut a tree, instead of the city being able to tell you, no, you cannot, if you have a certification from an arborist or a landscape architect saying that it's okay to cut the tree, then we would have to comply. It's not something we can decide to do or not do. It is the statute. It is the law. So I was just trying to bring our code up to speed with the law.
I move the item.
Second.
Let's move to second. Questions, comments from days. Call the roll.
Councilman Iguodaro?
Yes.
Councilman Leon?
Yes.
Councilman Williams?
yes,
Councilwoman Odom?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wilson?
No.
Vice Mayor Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Gilbert?
I'm going to vote no. Yeah, I'm going to vote no. And Madam Attorney, I know we had to bring this and the statute required. I just really don't think they should sit in Tallahassee and tell us how to cut trees.
And, specific,
Yeah,
where my church is, there were trees there that look to be 100 years old. And as they are developing that land, those trees cutting down, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that kind of landscaping that has taken root in our community for so long can be just replaced with concrete blocks without any accountability or any regulation from the local interests of the people. And so it's no.
yeah, I would know that. I know the item passes. Thank you.
Okay,
Consent?
okay, yes. 11.1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, allocating funds from Councilman Leon's Public Affairs account in the amount of $500 for the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Dade County Alumni Chapters, putting on the Ritz New Orleans-style fundraising event, providing for the adoption representations, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman Reggie Leon. 11.2, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, authorizing a rental fee waiver and costs associated at Scott Park on Sunday, March 1st, 2020, for the 2020 annual Sister Peter's Day Community Event, providing for the adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman David Williams, Jr. 11.3, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, allocating funds from Councilman IGHODARO'S special events account in the amount of $800 for Empty Dance Ensemble 2020 activities, providing for the adoption representations, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman Godaro. 11.4, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, allocating funds from Councilman Godara's Public Affairs account in the amount of $650 for the South Florida AFL-CIO 2020 Women of Labor Reception, providing for the adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman Godaro. 11.5, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, allocating funds from Councilman Godara's Special Events account in the amount of $1,000 for the Female Development World Organization 2020 Outreach Initiatives, providing for the adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman Godaro. 11.6, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, allocating funds from Councilman Godara's special event account in the amount of $2,000 for a free community gospel concert, providing for the adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman Godaro. 11.8, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, authorizing a rental fee waiver at A.J. King Park, located at 4230 Northwest 178th Street in Miami Gardens, Florida, for the Women's Breast and Heart Initiative Awareness events taking place every Saturday in March 2020, providing for the adoption representations, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilwoman Katrina Wilson. 11.9, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, directing the city clerk and city attorney to research the city's ability to establish an ethical campaign and civility policy for candidates during the city elections, providing for the adoption representations, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilwoman Katrina Wilson. 11.10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, authorizing the third renewal of award of ITB number 15-16-022, refuse collection of leased containers to Waste Management of Florida, Inc., authorizing the city manager to issue purchase orders not to exceed the budgeted amount, providing for adoption representations, providing for an effective date, sponsored by the city manager. 11.11, that was pulled?
That was pulled.
Sorry, that was pulled. 11.12, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute and attest respectively their certain agreement with the state of Florida for the acceptance of the litter control and prevention grant program in the amount of $16,000 to support the city's litter control and prevention program, a copy of which is attached to Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute attendant documents as a result of this grant process, authorizing a match of funds in the amount of $16,000, providing for adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by the city manager. 11.13, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, awarding invitation to bid number 18-19-026 to RGN Enterprises, DBA Cool Water Air Conditioning for Betty T. Ferguson Recreation Center, HVAC unit installation, authorizing the city manager to issue purchase orders for this purpose in an amount not to exceed the budgeted amount, providing for adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by the city manager. 11.14, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, awarding invitation to bid number 18-19-026 to RGN Enterprises, DBA Cool Water Air Conditioning Landscaping for Betty T. Ferguson Recreation Center HVAC unit replacement, authorizing the city manager to issue purchase orders for this purpose in an amount not to exceed the budgeted amount, providing for the adoption representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by the city manager. 11.15, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, amending the approved outside counsel list to include Allison F. Smith from the law firm Kelly Cronenberg, providing for the adoption of representation, providing for an effective date, sponsored by the city attorney. That's the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, show the consent agenda approved. I'd also like to introduce you all to someone. The lawyer who we just approved to do outside work for the city, Allison Smith, she's actually here. And no, I don't think any lawyer who we ever approved has actually been here when we approved them. So Allison, stand up and just say hello to me. This is Allison Smith, you all. She's partnered with the law firm of Kelly Cronenberg, and she's going to be doing labor stuff for the city. So welcome aboard. Also, we got John Johnson. John, Jenkins, you here? Would you, PBA? Stand up and say hi to the people. The Vice President of the PBA. Yeah. All right, we're now, what was pulled?
11.7.
Back to 11.7.
Okay, 11.7, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Miami Gardens, Florida, imposing a moratorium on all investment and support, direct and indirect, of the City of Miami Gardens for the Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Dolphins, and their affiliates until final resolution of the issue of Formula One racing in Miami Gardens, providing for the adoption of representations, providing for an effective date, sponsored by Councilman Borgadaro.
Mr. Igodaro, hold for 1 second. And also, we have Sylvia Castellanos from Governor DeSantis' office. We just got a whole bunch of people here today with us. Sylvia, come on, stand up and say hello to the folks here. All right, thank you. Welcome. Tell the governor we said hello. Now, Mr. Igodaro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the conversations we just had, my intention is to withdraw this item. But let me say this. You know, I was livid when I read the newspaper article about what happened with the NFL coming to town and basically had a party on our dime and left town. I'm not privy to any of those negotiations. It's not my interest to be privy to them. But once I found out that the NFL had a legacy project, that they couldn't find a school in Miami Gardens and had to go donate money to Miami Beach Senior High School. It is bad. It is the antics of that is just poor. I want to make sure that we are clear, at least for me, that we are not feeding a cancer that is going to destroy us in this community. Because if they are not supporting us, that means they don't have a good intention for us. I don't see why that would happen, unless there's an explanation that I don't know about. And that is why this is important. We can have a discussion. I heard from an independent source that the city gives the stadium $500,000 tax, some kind of tax break. I don't understand where that is coming from. I don't know. I asked the city manager today, and he said he doesn't know anything about that. Some of the things we hear, read in the papers, it is like news to me, right? So I need to make sure that if indeed what I'm reading or what I'm hearing is true, then we are not a part of a relationship. We're not continuously going to be a part of a relationship that is not reciprocal. You know, that is just benefiting one party in this relationship. I'm not against the stadium. They've been a good partner in this community. I'm not against big business. But when you have stuff like this come up, it makes you question. We just spent almost $250,000 for the Superfest. I supported it. I think it's a good idea because I thought we're in a good relationship with a partner that care about us. If they're not investing in our community, that means they don't care. I'm not going to be doing business with somebody that don't do business with me. That don't make no sense. So I got to make sure that the information is correct. And if all of this information is correct, then my idea of a moratorium stands. For me, I'm not going to support somebody that don't support me. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I understand that. But since he didn't just pull it, he talked about it. That's why. So now we have to move it to discuss it and then pull it. Somebody move the item. Move it. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All right, it's conversation now. You want to have conversation? Let's talk.
No, I was just curious. We got to be careful about the information and the data that we just read out there. And, we need to verify it. I think that Miami Beach situation is a lot more to it than just what they did. I think they put up a considerable amount of money to have that done at that school. So it's all these things that we hear that we never have an opportunity to discuss as a group to come to some consensus or some kind of understanding of what's going on. And I think that's why this is important to me. It's been important to me for 10 years. And hopefully we can come to some resolution as to where our next step should be.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. Mr. Harris, did you want to say something?
No, I agree with Mr. Williams.
Okay, I think that, go ahead.
I don't know if I can keep it short, but one of the things that I have to say, and I agree with my colleagues, is that there is always a considerable amount of information that is out there in the community that we are not responsible for putting out there. And oftentimes those are half-truths, sometimes they're the whole truth, and sometimes they're straight out lies. And what we don't do is we never answer those. And so it remains in the public domain, and the perception sometimes of our city is that we are doing things that we're not doing, and that we are doing things that we're not doing things that we should be doing. And then when we come as a council and we ask, it's something totally different than what has been purported or asserted. And it's unfortunate that we don't have a voice that counters the narrative, okay? And so the misinformation from a councilwoman's perspective, that when my constituents ask me, I have to filter the information to them. And I think that we've got to begin to have a voice in some of this, because you have discussions that are going on and misinformation being passed out and people saying, and it really amounts to gossip, because there's no factual basis for it. People are putting their own spin on things, and then there's this feeling that there's opposition even among this group that sits here, when there really isn't. It's just that we have not been given the information. And workshops and debriefings and things of that nature, to me, should be a normal course of business here. The Super Bowl came and it went. Where's the debriefing? How did we do? What was the bottom line? What were our failures? What were our successes? How are we going to move forward? Never had that conversation. And we should be having those conversations in a manner that allows us all to be reflective and deliberate about how we move forward on behalf of these residents. Because I agree with you. When we speak for 113,000. And those people are the ones that we meet on the street and we meet in Publix, and they ask us the tough questions. And so I am saying that I shouldn't have to read the Miami Times to find out what's going on in my city. I should not have to read the Miami Herald. I should have the news first before it's printed. And so I think, and I believe that the workshop is the beginning of being able to get a handle on this and being able to be a council of 7 and not of 2, not of 1, or not of 5, but a council of 7 where we speak with one voice and we hear with one ear.
2 ears.
Okay. Okay. All right, cool.
Are you getting ready to respond, or?
Oh, I wasn't going to respond. I was going to say something.
I just wanted to, understanding that our Councilwoman Wilson is one of our newer councilperson, just so that we don't leave here with false information. Anything that we need to know as it relates to either our agenda or anything of that nature, we are to go as council members. We have the authority to go to our attorney, to our city manager, and the city manager has an array of knowledge. These people are not just sitting there because they're gorgeous and handsome, but they have a wealth of knowledge as it relates to our agenda. Not only our agenda, but as it relates to the city itself. So the only reason I'm saying that, so that you'll know that you have the right to go just as well as I, and don't let me be the only one to aggravate them, because I do. You know, I make sure that I go to the attorney, to the city clerk, to the city manager, and I hold them accountable for making sure that I know what's going on in the city. And if something gets out that I don't know about, believe me, that manager's head is not bald for nothing. I mean, I really do get on him, and I'm sure he'll be happy to tell you that. But we can get all of our information from at least those two, if no one else.
But it's
No,
not
hold
the
on. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, just for information, and I agree that the Miami Times and the Miami Herald are not good sources of information. Mr. Godaro, I don't think this item is bad. I just think it's you're aiming at the wrong target. So because we see everything, we see the Dolphins and the stadium and the NFL and the Super Bowl as all the same thing. It's easy to say, let's not do business with the stadium because they didn't give us, the NFL didn't give us a legacy project. But the people who didn't give us a legacy project was the Super Bowl committee. The NFL gives, I guess, $1 million or whatever it is, almost $1 million to the Super Bowl committee to do legacy projects in Miami-Dade County, where the Super Bowl is going to be. The Super Bowl committee then gets to decide where they put those legacy projects. For the record, we argued that a legacy project should be in Miami Gardens vehemently. That is my position. That is Commissioner Jordan's position, I believe, also. So the people who could argue the point argued the point. Ultimately, the Super Bowl committee came up with a formula, which we also disagree with, and I think that it's something that this dais can take up, that they were going to give let the municipalities and jurisdictions that were giving them money determine where the legacy projects went, which meant if Miami Beach gave them money, then Miami Beach got to pick Miami Beach High. If Miami gave them money, Miami got to pick their Bayside with the lights. If the county gave them money, they got to pick the park down there. They got to pick. Now, our argument essentially is that means it's not actually a legacy project from the stadium, from the NFL. What that means is that you're just offsetting whatever their contribution is. And if they really want to leave something to a community, that's not actually how you do it. We fundamentally disagree with the formula. We're in the middle of that argument right now. I don't think that it will be done the same way again. But that is not the stadium or the Dolphins or the NFL. That's the Super Bowl host committee, and a completely separate conversation, because they did ask us to contribute money to the Super Bowl host committee, and we declined. We declined because they wanted us to give them $500,000 and you get this much for $500,000, you get this much for $250,000. From our perspective, we have the burden of actually getting the city ready anyway. So it's money that we have to spend without regard to giving the Super Bowl host committee money. I'm not willing to give the Super Bowl host committee money to bring a Super Bowl to a city when I have to make the city right for the Super Bowl to come. That does not make sense. That is where we are with the Super Bowl host committee. With regard to their treatment of Miami Dolphins, sometimes we forget how things were. It is not where we need it to be, but it's most certainly not where it was. Also, in relation to the events, I don't respond to Facebook comments. As a matter of course, I just don't respond to them. But I saw the comments where you could have the NFL live experience at the Betty T. Ferguson Recreational Complex. I saw those comments. Let me assure you that we're not prepared to have 200,000 people coming in and out of the city on cars because there are no hotels here and there's no reliable mass transit to bring them here on 27th Avenue and 199th Street for 2 weeks. We're not prepared to have the traffic. We're not prepared to secure the area. We are not prepared for that. When they came here the last time, they did it at the stadium. Because of the different security requirements, the stadium was unavailable for that footprint. So when people say stuff like they could have had the NFL live experience and the NFL fun zone here, I can appreciate people saying that, but these are the same people who complain when there's a little bit of traffic. The traffic that you are saying you want in this city, if you say you want the NFL live experience in Miami Gardens, it's not comprehensible from a policing perspective, from a code perspective, from a mobility perspective. It's just not comprehensible. And this doesn't speak to your item. This isn't a criticism of you. These are in response to some of the things, and I understand that people anecdotally will sit down and they'll say, oh yeah, we could have had this here. Realistically, we're not built for that right now. Realistically, you're going to put big events like that within walking space or mass transit space of a lot of hotel rooms. Realistically, that is how that's going to work. We should have certainly gotten a legacy project. Every time the Super Bowl comes, we should get a legacy project. It ought to be Miami Gardens. No, you can't. Why not? Because public comment is over. And Ms. Coleman, I promise you, if you yell out of my meeting, you'll be escorted out. Okay. You good, Ms. Coleman? Thank you. Wait, hold on, because there was one more thing that you mentioned I wanted to bring up. Just one more thing. So it was the NFL experience. It was the NFL Discovery Zone, the thing that was in the convention center for kids. Those are both things that we actually looked at having here. We just don't have the space for them. We don't have legitimately the ability to have them here. One of the things that we talked about businesses is that the Connect program is actually an interesting program. It's a program that we actually encourage them strongly to do, but it actually helped a lot of black businesses. A lot of black businesses. So, and it was something that this city and this county commissioner pushed them into doing. And so when you say that businesses don't benefit, well, no, a lot of our businesses did actually benefit. And listen, and just for the record, cities don't make money off Super Bowls. The county does not make money off Super Bowls. That is not how that works. What happens is businesses, go ahead, have a seat. Just it'll be one more second. He's fine. What happens is businesses make money when people come to the area. So a good example is when the mayor of Kansas City was here, and we hosted him at Finger Licking here in Miami Gardens. Well, the next day, Finger Licking was completely overrun with people wearing Kansas City jerseys. What we used the Super Bowl to do, and we got a lot of earned media on it, was to advertise places in the city. So you saw businesses show an uptick in those areas. Now, we tried to do the Superfest. That wasn't for the NFL. They did not want us to do that. They did not want us to do that. The Super Bowl host committee did not want us to do that. We did that because we felt like there ought to be something here in Miami Gardens. It didn't go off as well as we thought it should. But it was the first time trying to do it. The next time, hopefully, it'll go off better. But it was our way of saying that we're going to participate in this whether you help us or not. So there needs to be something here. We weren't built for those big events. The Superfest was something that we could do. We did it. Could have been done better, and we saw businesses actually prosper. Those are the type of things that actually happened during the Super Bowl. And so I appreciate the misinformation and the information and the opinions that look like facts on social media and in the newspapers. And I appreciate any ordinance attacking the Super Bowl host committee, because I feel like how they decided to allocate the funds for legacy projects was unconscionable. But that's just not the Dolphins. That's just not the stadium. And so when I saw the item, I saw what it was aiming at. And it's just the wrong person. It's the wrong entity. And we conflate them all the time.
Mr. Mayor.
You can't, but if you wait around, I'll talk to you afterwards as long as you want.
Mr. Mayor, and I want to address two things. The comment Ms. Odom made and the comment Ms. Wilson made. And I think, too, some extent, they're both correct. You know, my issue is, what you said about the Super Bowl host committee, I already knew. But it didn't come from this city. It came from outside the city. That's how I got my information. And I think that we need to have more information internally about what's going on up here. I mean, and I think it's easy to do. How do you ask the question when you don't know the question to ask? I mean, there are a lot of things I find out in the media that I don't know. So should I go digging around everywhere for information?
That's a great question. And when you all figure out how, because my expectation is that the manager, because I don't sit in meetings alone, I sit in meetings with lawyers and administrators and all types of stuff, people who can actually brief you all, even though I can't. I always assume that if you ask them a question about something, they actually answered the question. So you're asking, how do you know which question to ask? And I can't necessarily answer that for you, Councilman Williams. What I can say is this. The sheer amount of information that we process daily and weekly on an extraordinary number of issues makes it difficult to say that if you say we want all the information about this, then they can target that. But we're dealing with a lot of stuff that we all sit in and we all deal with. If you want them to know about the Super Bowl, ask them everything about the Super Bowl. Ask them everything about the Super Bowl host committee. I don't know how, besides telling you to ask them, I don't know what to say about that. But I would never not, I mean, it doesn't benefit me to have the information as a secret. I don't mind you all knowing that the Super Bowl host committee chose not to give Miami Gardens a legacy project, and we fought for a legacy project. I don't mind you all knowing that. I mean, I don't even mind, I think you can Google who their names are. You can look at the members of the Super Bowl host committee. I don't mind, and it will not come as a surprise to them that I have angst towards that situation, because we've had the arguments already.
But the issue, and I say, define we. And I think that some of this has to be a matter of our policy and our practices. I've never had a question that I have asked our city manager, our attorney, our clerk that wasn't answered sufficiently for me. But my issue has been is that we are in a reactive state and not an active state, which means that the information comes to us after it's been done and not prior to. So there is never a pulse gotten from me about what and how I think about anything prior to it being advanced on behalf of anything. And I'm saying, how can that be? How is it that I can find out that there was $1 million snub of the city and didn't know it here first, before it hit the paper? And so and again, I'm saying that this is not an issue of anybody being a secret from where I'm sitting. I think that it has to be a matter of our policy and our practice to ensure that this council is debriefed and briefed prior to and after significant things come that we need to know. There should not be any reason why we are not finding things out. And again, I do know that there are things that happen in our community. People have come to me and say, hey, Councilwoman, I need you to find out some information about this or that. I get that part. But when it comes to, I've just been astonished. I've just been astonished. And again, I know about this staff here in this city is an impeccable staff. They are above and beyond question in so many areas. So this is not a criticism from the way people do their jobs, not at all. I really think it's a matter of practice and protocols and being able to establish the kinds of things that allow us to govern with full transparency.
Councilwoman, part of the reason why they don't take the pulse of individual council members is because the law does not allow them to take the pulse of individual council members. That is circumventing.
That's not what I meant. I get
Well,
it.
yeah. So it's a very fine line. But if one of you all could figure out how to come up with a system, I ain't opposed to a system. But you all have to figure out which issues and how you want it debriefed, and just figure it out.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I think I hear her concern, Councilwoman Wilson. An example of this is what happened with, I think this is one of the big gaffes that Formula One made. I heard about Formula One deal in the newspaper, that they already signed a deal to come to Miami Gardens in the newspaper without any community input, no community engagement. So I think there is a problem of communication. There's a problem of communication, and I think it's not intentional on any part of us on this council, but I think by default it's happening, and we got to correct it.
And I really believe that. I don't really think that it's some conspiracy to keep people behind the veil. I think that we just don't have a policy or a procedure that says when things are at this level, this is provided in some kind of written form or noted to the council members. It's the same thing in this city. Anytime there is a major shootout or anything like that, we're notified immediately. We're notified immediately. Our phones ring and we know what is happening in this city right away. And to me, that's a heads up. So that when I walk out and my neighbors are asking me about a shootout or anything that's going on that involves this law enforcement, we are notified. I am saying that if there is going to be an article in the paper about this city, we ought to be this is coming out, reporters looking for this, we ought to be given a heads up. And not only that, but just with some of these operational issues that are involving things, we ought to be given a heads up. And if you want a draft of a policy or something like that, I can proffer that. Yeah. For that purpose, and we can hash it out. But once again, I think that maybe some people know and I just
You
don't
just
know.
said something I think was a good. If we know that a story is coming, we can brief you, definitely alert you that a story is coming.
Yes.
We can definitely alert you that because sometimes we'll get questions beforehand.
A story, these kinds of things just to me are a matter of sound accountability, and particularly since everybody on this is responsible to somebody.
Okay. You're withdrawing?
Withdrawing, yes.
Thank you. Sure, withdrawing.
What's happening with the item?
He withdrew it.
He withdrew it.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
No, withdrawn by the maker.
All right.
All right. I think that's it, right? All right, Mr. Manager.
Nothing, Mayor.
Ms. Bennington.
No report.
Madam Deputy Clerk, good job.
No report.
Mr. Ighodaro.
No report, thank you.
Ms. Leon.
No report.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes. On Tuesday of next week, District 1 is having, Dr. Gallen and I are sponsoring the District 1 cello. And last year, it was an incredible event that displayed all of the major talents of our children in our schools in the various magnet programs. And it just really, really is a great showcase of what the students and what the future of Miami Gardens residents are going to look like. So I would encourage all of our residents to come out and witness the work that is being done in our schools, the work that our students are involved in, and I am certain that you will not be disappointed. They will be highlighting the fraternities and sororities and the Greek organizations, but the children will be doing it. So please, if you have some time, it's Tuesday at Miami Carroll City Senior High School. I believe it's at 6 o'clock. in its auditorium. There is no cost, and it will be one enjoyable evening. So I look forward to seeing you there.
I'd like to say that we had a bus of seniors that went to the Florida's annual Senior Day. It was quite a successful trip, even though it rained the entire time that we were there. However, we had a fantastic meeting with the entire group with Senator Brannan, with questions and answers, and people were able to get a lot of their questions answered by the senator. So that was quite an eventful thing. Now, for Black History, we're doing a Black History extravaganza. Before I go to that, I want to thank Vice Mayor Harris and also Councilman Leon for your financial support for the seniors on the Senior Day. Okay, I want to make sure that I do that. For Black History Extravaganza, it's going to be Saturday, February 29th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Jointly with the Elderly Affairs Committee, we'll be supporting them. And there's also, within that event, I think the flyers are on the table. We've been announcing this. We don't want you to miss this extravaganza. Aside from a lot of talent, there will be exclusive history of the City of Miami Gardens that's going to be presented on that evening. So make sure you pick up a flyer on the outside. And lastly, I'd like to mention again that we are promoting Meatless Monday. We're challenging everyone to try to stay away from eating meat on Mondays. Or if you want to decide to do it another day other than Monday, you're welcome to it. But at least take one day of the week and not eat meat. And that's for all of our meat lovers. Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, pass the ribs? No, I'm joking. You got a report?
Yeah, real quick, Mr. Mayor. On Saturday, we're having our annual robotics competition at Carroll City Middle School. It'll be between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to bring aboard a new sponsor with Florida Power and Light, and they brought out they did a demonstration with their drones at Barbara Hawkins Elementary School. So our kids see the opportunities that'll be available for them if they continue on the path of robotics and engineering, that there'll be opportunities for them at Florida Power and Light and other agencies. So if you guys are available on Saturday, please come out and support our children.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Two quick items. We finally reached a milestone in our science. I mean, you know, we call it the Miami Gardens Science and Engineering Fair, and there is no engineering at the elementary level. And the whole concept behind this is that as kids move through the system in the first 5 to 6 years, when they got to the middle school, we would not leave them cold. We would continue the science fair at the middle school level. So on March 13th, we are going to have our inaugural middle school science fair with with 6 middle schools that are in Miami Gardens, 5 in Miami Gardens and 1 outside Lake Stevens. Will participate in that. It's going to be during the daytime. You'll hear more information on it. We encourage people to come. Okay. And then next Saturday, on the 22nd, we're having the 4th step of our elementary science fair, where we've asked all the winners and their parents, up to 4 members, to come to FIU South Campus, and they put on a great show with some Whiz Kids science kids that they brought in, along with some PhD students. This year is going to be my last year here, so we really want to make this a big event. And I'm asking people in the community, if you know of any elementary school kids that participated in the science fair or want to attend that event, I'm renting a bus to take them down there. We would welcome them to have that exposure on that campus and to see those things going on. That ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of items to the members of the dais. I'm going to be traveling. We're setting the dates now. I possibly will be missing a meeting or two because I'm going to be traveling to Tallahassee on some TPO stuff and some North Rail stuff, trying to get the preliminary funds set for the budget for the North Line, as it would be. And also our Performing Arts Center. Tentatively, we're in the budget right now, but that $1.5 million over 3 years helps us pay for infrastructure and offset the cost for the CRA. So it's an important item. We finally got in the budget. It'd be great if we could keep it in the budget. But I anticipate being in Tallahassee at least once, probably twice, at least, on both of those items. Today we had the Heritage Bowl. I'd like to thank Councilman Williams and Councilwoman Wilson and Councilwoman Odom for coming out and supporting it. The winners were Henry Filer Middle School and Westland Hialeah High School. And they knew a lot about black history. And they knew a lot about black history. So it was a good experience. Yeah, it was a good experience. And so I thank staff, everyone from the Parks and Recreation staff who actually put that on, and the questions and the organizing, and Florida Memorial. Florida Memorial partnering with us on it, the president coming by and addressing the kids, all of that stuff was great. I appreciate all of y'all for doing that. Also, we have our annual laptop giveaway again this year. The annual laptop giveaway is May 20th. The annual laptop giveaway is May 20th, and we're trying to make it the biggest laptop giveaway we give about 200 out, so it's already pretty big, but we're going to try to do it massive this year. Again, these are kids from Norland, Carroll City, and Northwestern. Our kids who are going to college, who've done well in high school and they're going to college. And so we give them laptops. And so anything anyone can do to support that would be cool. But in any case, please mark on your calendars May 20th, because we're planning the laptop giveaway for that day. And I'd just like to make just maybe a brief observation about, because vision is an interesting thing. Going forward, this city has to find ways to build businesses inside the city. Right now, the millage rate is 6.9636. It's been that way ever since I've been mayor. We haven't lowered it. We built the reserves, and that's good. If you're going to continue to build the reserves, but you're going to lower the millage, you're going to have to tax stuff that's not single-family homes. You're going to have to tax density. Condos, market rate, office space, you're going to have to go up. You're going to have to tax industrial. You're going to have to tax commercial. When you look at the policies that the city has put forward from a land use perspective, that's what it speaks to. Because we're not looking at what happens this year. We're looking at how the city sustains itself over the next 20 or 30 years. This city was incorporated, and I love this city. This is my hometown. It's always been my hometown. But it was incorporated with 60,000 single-family homes, essentially. So it was incorporated with the major corridors basically being zoned for residential. We've set about changing those regulations, not because we just love business, but because we understand that the city has to be able to sustain itself. And taxes have to go down eventually. These are things that have to happen. A city this size has to have more businesses, period. A city this size has to have more industrial, period. A city this size has to have more commercial, period. We're able to do things like the snorkeling and the scuba and the chess and the free Spanish and the free Creole lessons and the things we do for our seniors. We're able to do those because we built a good budget. We built a good budget by actually looking at the finances and how cities finance themselves and having sound practices with regard to that. That's how that happens. It doesn't happen any other way. And so when you talk about vision, what you'll see is the most comprehensive vision document for any city is its budget. We invest a lot of money in children, the future. A lot. As a percentage-wise, it's probably more than any city around. We do that because we understand the importance of building forward and building them up and paying it forward. We have to look at things from that perspective. We have to. Yeah, look, I understand this is my last year as mayor. I also understand that the city exists in perpetuity. And I understand that, it's easier to do things if you have the finances to do things. That is what has to happen in this city. The other observation would be stuff that happened in this community before any of us were on the dais and other elected officials, and this is how it happens, not just in Miami Gardens, but around the county, and what I find, honestly, among black communities. When people want to do things in our communities, they come and they'll ask us, and we'll say, yeah, and they sponsored a good turkey drive. And they sponsored good backpack giveaways. Oh, and they built a playground. Listen, I've never asked for a playground. I never asked for a turkey drive. I've never asked for a backpack giveaway. We need to start to actually do business. Look at how we build black businesses in this city that create black jobs and black wealth in this city. Everything we target needs to be towards that. Because if we do that, we create more jobs. We do that, we create more opportunities for kids. We do that, we lower the millage rate. We need to do that. But that's not going to be on me. That's not just going to be on us. That's going to be on you all. That's going to be on y'all. Thank you. Oh, happy Valentine's Day. Show us adjourned.
Motion.
You're adjourned.
Second.
Thank you.